How are you? Welcome to the Richie Allen Show in association with BVtv and davidike.com. My name is Richie Allen. Lovely to be with you. This is Series 2 or Season 2, Episode 3. And thanks very much for watching the programme. And I say to you now, tweet it, Facebook it, send it out on social media when you've watched it, because that's what we want you to do, so just do it. Lots to get into this week. We'll be talking about the shooting of an 18-year-old girl in Hebron in Israel. We'll be talking about Piggate, David Cameron, of course. We'll talk about the evils of those of you who write with your left hands. God damn, every one of you, by the way. And lots more besides as well. But I'll tell you where I'm going to start this week. There's no other place to start, really, than with the news is that a BBC Panorama programme about historic paedophilia in Britain, which was due to be broadcast back in April, but was shelved. I love the idea that they shelved it. They shelved it because they didn't want victims of child abuse to think that the BBC was unsympathetic to them. Well, it's now going to be broadcast on the 6th of October when the Conservative Party are holding their annual conference here in this great city of Manchester. So I'm going to read you now from the Independent. So I'm going to read, right? The BBC has confirmed it will broadcast a delayed Panorama investigation into allegations of a paedophile ring next month. Kerry Thomas tweeted out, can now confirm that the much anticipated programme into VIP paedophile ring allegations will be on the 6th of October on BBC One. It'll be around about 8:30 p.m. Won't be BST then. It will be. I don't think the clocks will have gone back. So it'll be 8:30 p.m. BST, I reckon. It's expected to debunk, this is the very controversial aspect of this story, to debunk claims that a string of senior establishment figures were responsible for murdering 3 boys in the 70s and 1980s. Like I already told you, it was due to be broadcast in April, but they decided not to. They're going to cast doubts over the allegations made by a witness entitled Nick. Executives within the BBC, this is still from the Independent story now, by the way, were said to be concerned that the programme would be seen as an attack on the victims, which I said already, and might discredit its own report into the alleged abuse. Because don't forget that the BBC is waiting Dame Janet Smith's review of the corporation's responsibility for the sex abuse and child abuse carried out by Jimmy Savile. And they expect, the BBC, that Dame Janet Smith's review will be highly critical of the BBC. In the unlikely event that you're watching this programme and you don't really know the extent of what Jimmy Savile has gotten up to over the years, do go to davidike.com headlines and just put in Jimmy Savile. You'll see all the things that have been attributed to Savile, the hundreds, possibly thousands of victims of the record-breaking paedophile Jimmy Savile, who worked for years at the BBC, hugely successful presenter, radio, television, probably BBC's biggest earner for years. How could he be doing what he was doing without senior figures at the BBC knowing? I also say, as I said on the Richie Allen radio show this week, how could Prince Charles be such a close personal friend of Jimmy Savile's? And he didn't meet him solely at charity dues and at functions. This guy was a regular in Prince Charles's house. He was a regular guest at parties at Christmas. How could they know or not know what Jimmy Savile was doing? But we'll get into that again, of course, in the future. We've gotten into it in the past. Michael Shrimpton is a barrister. He's recently been in prison. He's on bail at the moment. Michael has been on the Richie Allen radio show in the past. He's a controversial figure. He was in prison recently because he was found guilty of a hoax. He allegedly hoaxed the British Defence, I don't know, the Department of Defence, the Ministry of Defence. He hoaxed them by telling them that there was going to be a nuclear event at the Olympics in London in 2012. Now, I won't get too much into what he was convicted of, not because I'm trying to protect Michael Shrimpton, but you can find it on Google or on Yahoo or whatever. Right, now, but who is he really, Shrimpton? Like I said, he was called to the London Bar in 1983. For years, he was a specialist in national security and constitutional law. He had wide-ranging connections, it's fair to say, in Western Intelligence Agency and also amongst the ex-Soviet bloc countries. He has taught, basically, as an adjunct professor of intelligence studies at the Department of National Security, Intelligence and Space Studies at the American Military University. This guy is connected up to his tits, right? Now, the establishment would have you believe that he's lost the plot and gone totally mad in recent times. I've had some serious arguments with him on radio shows about his belief that the Germans are responsible for everything. He's got this thing, Michael Shrimpton, that every bad thing that ever happened ever, the Germans are somehow behind it. Anyway, he wrote a book called Spy Hunter. And he's important because he's one of the only, along with David Icke, he's the only man alive that spoke about Ted Heath and wrote about Ted Heath while Heath was alive and made claims about Ted Heath abusing children. This is an excerpt from an interview that I conducted with Michael Shrimpton back in December of last year, where he goes into great detail about the crimes committed by former British Prime Minister Edward Heath. Listen to this.
As a barrister, I use words with advisedly, with care. Ted Heath, I've never suggested Heath himself murdered any of the boys that he abused. And he was abusing boys down to about the age of 14. Other people on the boat, on the crew, murdered the boys and threw them overboard, their bodies weighted down by chains.
Where, Michael? Where was this taking place?
This was taking place around in the waters around the Channel Islands. The boys were picked up from Hope de la Regaine children's home in Jersey, which itself was an old Abwehr facility. There's a strong connection between German intelligence and Hope de la Regaine. It was used by German intelligence in World War II. Heath, who was working for the Germans, is taking boys on board Morning Cloud, particularly Morning Cloud 4. There were several Morning Clouds. They were brought to him by Jimmy Savile. Savile was running a paedophile ring with the protection of the Cabinet Office, partly because the Cabinet Secretary, John Hunt, was also a paedophile. Savile and other members of the ring were supplying boys to John Hunt, the Cabinet Secretary, and to Heath and to other senior figures.
These were allegations that were made in David Icke's book, The Biggest Secret, which was published in 1998. Because you watched the show, because you listened to the radio show, I'm not going to make you suffer now and listen to the long list of allegations by victims who survived, by the way, against Ted Heath and others. What I do want to play for you, though, is a clip that I played on the radio show this week, probably for the 500th time, probably. But it's important. I want you to look at this clip by Tim Fortescue. Now, he was a chief whip under Ted Heath in the early 1970s. This guy was a senior Conservative power broker. Listen to Tim Fortescue describing in a documentary from 1995, ironically, a documentary made by the BBC. Listen to Fortescue talking about politicians coming to the whips to say we're in trouble, we owe a lot of money, or we've been buggering boys, don't you know, and we need some help. Listen to Fortescue say what he did.
Anyone with any sense who was in trouble would come to the whips and tell them the truth and say, no, I'm in a jam, can you help? It might be debt, it might be scandal involving small boys, or any kind of scandal which a member seemed likely to be mixed up in. They'd come and ask if we could help. And if we could, we did. And we would do everything we can, because we would store up brownie points. That sounds a pretty nasty reason, but it's one of the reasons. Is if we can get a chap out of trouble, then he'll do as we ask forevermore.
That sort of thing, don't you know? It could have been any old thing, you know. It could have been any old thing. We're in trouble, we owe some money, or it might have been that we were interfering with small boys. The normality of what Fortescue said. This is what I can't get my head around. I've been listening to this clip. I've watched it. He also said that we did whatever had to be done. And as I said on a radio show this week, I'm not suggesting for a second that Tim Fortescue had any involvement of the disappearance of boys. Not at all. How could I say that? It would be morally wrong, ethically wrong as a journalist. But he said things were done that had to be done to protect these politicians. It's absolutely scandalous. Hayden, the nonchalance with which he said it could be owing money, it could be interfering with small boys. He said small boys.
Well, let's be honest, they're very similar things, aren't they? You know, owe someone £10, frightfully embarrassing. Buggered his son, even worse. God, waff.
And we did anything we could.
Everything's about protecting the system. We heard Norman Tebbit when he came out and said, look, we know this was going on. We decided the system was more important. I'm not going to say to his credit, but, you know, to kind of his credit, he said, you know, in hindsight, huge mistake.
Yeah.
How there can be hindsight when it comes to the abuse and murder of children, I'm not sure how anyone could overlook. What system is worth saving if it
involves that?
Yeah.
Well said, mate. I'll tell you what I'm going to say on this, the last thing I'm going to say in it today anyway. Yes, the BBC are going to try and cover this up, as are the broadsheet newspapers in this country. On a previous Richie Allen show, we got into attacking LBC Radio in London because some of their presenters, not just Ian Dale, were actually going on air. Remember, now presenters are supposed to be objective. You're supposed to ask questions of both sides, let the audience then make their mind up. That's the way it was meant to be. You're a fucking hypocrite, Richie. No, I'm not. I've never claimed on the Richie Allen radio show to do journalism. I do opinion and commentary based on what I think of the mainstream media. Okay, they're going to cover it up. Why are they going to do that? Because this will bring the country to its knees. This will bring the establishment to its knees. When Joe and Josephine Soap, who ordinarily turn a blind eye to what its government does and goes back to the X Factor or to Man City or Man United or Arsenal or Spurs or goes into town to Primark, spends their money at McDonald's, these people will not tolerate the knowledge that the people charged with looking after them were buggering, raping and murdering children on an absolutely astronomical scale. So back to Harvey Procter. It's my belief, my contention, that one of the things they have been doing is they have been throwing the spotlight on accusations against people that they know to be innocent. Oh, you're a fucking conspiracy theorist, Richie, it's crazy. No, it isn't. What would they do? What else would they do? It makes perfect sense. Perfect sense. If in this particular office, if there was mass paedophilia going on in this office, if there was, and I wanted to cover it up, well, start pointing the finger at people who are not involved in it. And then you can call it a witch hunt, you see. Then you can say, oh, these are crazy stories without any merit. And maybe that's what the Harvey Procter story is about. Procter, years ago, was caught visiting rent boys. Boo-hoo. Some of them are 17, some of them are 18. It was wrong. It was wrong what Procter was doing. And he was caught out, and the Sunday newspapers caught him out doing it. He eventually admitted it. He's a gay man. He was being a bit stupid. So what? Procter might not have abused any boys. Marvellous. Let's accuse Procter of it. Let's slip stories out there that say Procter's involved in it. All the focus is on Procter. Then you prove that he didn't. It's all madness. It's all crazy. It's conspiracy theory. It isn't. It isn't conspiracy theory, folks. It isn't. The Prime Minister, the former Prime Minister of this country was raping children. That's a fact. I know it to be a fact. Not because I want it to be a fact. Not because it's important for people who are in the independent media to be proven right on this. No, it isn't. It's a fact. It's a fact. Like I said, biggest secret 1998. BVtv.com/headlines. Read Spy Hunter by Michael Shrimpton. It's all in there. It's all in there. This guy was challenged when he was alive to sue those people who were claiming these things against him for libel, and he never did. Going to leave that there for now. On a week when the BBC are talking about this, and by the way, don't for a minute think that it's a coincidence that this panorama will be broadcast while the Conservative Party are having their annual conference here in Manchester. It's no coincidence at all. No coincidence. Here's something to make you sick. Makes me sick. I'm not a saint, you know, I'm not a great guy, I'm not the nicest guy in the world, but I get upset. I sometimes cry, I sometimes bawl. When I hear stories like this, 100,000 children in this country are living in temporary accommodation after being made homeless. This is a story, as you can see, run by the BBC yesterday. The figures have increased by 12% over the last 12 months. 66,980 individuals or families were registered as having no home. Homeless charities blamed housing benefit failings. As you will know, this government has decimated benefits for working people now. Not people who sit around doing fuck all, but working people who earn low incomes. They've attacked it whole scale. My partner in this programme, my colleague Hayden Hewitt, has gotten into this at great length on the Live Leak show on liveleak.com every Thursday. They have fucked the poorest people in this country. People getting up every morning to go to shit jobs for low pay. 100,000 people homeless. In a week, Hayden, when they've decided to renege on a promise they made during the election not to cut free meals for poor people in schools, eh?
Oh yeah, it never fails to amaze me. We will never cut tax credits allowance.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people for whom the tax credits allowance is an absolute lifeline.
Keeps them alive.
Keeps them off benefits.
Keeps them in a house.
Keeps them off, and they're not benefits. That's giving people money back.
Yeah.
You know
that they've paid into the system over the years.
Thanks
very much for explaining that. Do you want to just say that again? Because I've never explained that well, to be honest with you.
Tax credits are topping up your wages. You still pay tax on your wages, so essentially they're giving you some back of what's inherently yours anyway.
To begin with.
I would say, therefore, the government can't piss it up the wall, but we all know that money doesn't actually physically exist anymore anyway. Unless it's been in your hands, it's not there. But yeah, the people are losing out, and now they're not going to feed. We already know there are working families and working single parents out there that can barely afford to feed the kids. There's people who they look emaciated. They're working 38 hours a week and can't feed and keep their children warm and clothe them. And we're going to take one lousy meal.
Oxfam reckon 1/3 of every child under 10 in this country. Now, this is an Oxfam stat that I don't have in front of me today. I think it's from a couple of years ago. 1/3, Hayden, of children under 10 don't get the 3 squares a day. They might get 2.
No, they don't.
What the fuck is going on?
And yet, George Osborne... Sorry, I'm about to climb up on a soapbox.
No, climb up on a soapbox.
George Osborne can come on the TV and tell me we're in recovery. We're doing well.
Yeah.
We're doing well. How I've not put my foot through my television when that smug, arrogant, disgusting man is there saying, we're doing really well.
Yeah, you're doing well, you bastard, yeah. And the other millionaire members of your cabinet are doing well.
Oh, they're doing super.
But the rest of us are not doing quite so well. Yeah, I'm not homeless. I'm not going to claim that I'm like any of these people we're talking about. But it's sickening.
Just blame the poor, Richard.
Blame the poor, mate. Blame the poor. The chief executive of Bernardo said it was a national embarrassment. It isn't. It's a fucking disgrace. It's a disgrace to call yourself a first world country. We were talking earlier on, Hayden and myself, Britain is the 5th or the 6th biggest economy in the world, whichever one it is. People are going to school with no food in their stomach. 100,000 children are homeless. And a lot of those children are not in temporary accommodation. A lot of them are homeless. Actually homeless.
There is the other thing about the hot meal. There's some people say, well, it's all right, you can skip a meal. It has been proven that children who are not fed properly and skip that hot meal, their ability to retain information and do academically well suffers
of course it does.
Quite dramatically. So we're helping children more thick people.
Exactly, spot on, mate. It's disgraceful. It's disgraceful. Javed Khan from Bernardo said, day in, day out, we work with vulnerable families and young people who've been pushed into rent debt because of low wages. Benefit cuts have left them unable to cover the costs of essentials. Now, kudos to the BBC for doing the story. Apart from the wannabe left-wing press like The Guardian, nobody else has covered it. Even the newspapers are spending all their time mocking the cabinet or the shadow cabinet of the new Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn, laughing at his policies, mocking him and the people he's working with, failing, of course, to point out that Corbyn is was barely able to put together a shadow cabinet, such as the corruption and the filth within the Labour Party, who don't want to be associated with with these policies. I'm talking about the parliamentary party. That's what you're getting. No talk about what's happening to people on the streets of this country, and the people being forced into food banks. It's madness. Speaking of madness, oh Jesus, speaking of madness, no pun intended. Take a look at this story out of Oklahoma, and it isn't an isolated example. I have to keep saying that. Look at this.
The teacher thinks it's evil if you're left-handed. News Channel 4's Abby Broyles reports tonight from our mobile newsroom.
Zaid is only 4 years old. It's his first year here at Oaks Elementary in Okemah, but his mom kept him home today after a dispute with his teacher over being left-handed.
Zaid is like most kids in pre-K, learning how to read and write. Like his mom, Alicia, Zaid is a lefty.
From picking things up to throwing things to batting to writing to, just the coloring, that you would do at home with them. He's always used his left hand.
Until last week at homework time, Alicia asked him why he was writing with his right hand, not his left.
I just asked if, there was anything that had his teachers ever said anything about his hands, and he raises this one and he says this one's bad.
Alicia sent the teacher a note and got a strong response. This article calling left-handedness unlucky, evil, and sinister, and says, for example, the devil is often portrayed as left-handed. Alicia couldn't believe it.
It breaks my heart for him because someone actually believes that. Like, you believe my child is evil because he's left-handed. It's crazy.
She went to the superintendent with the article.
There was no suspension of any kind. There was basically nothing that was done to this teacher. She told him that she thought I needed literature on it.
Zaid will likely transfer to another class just 2 months into the school year.
I don't feel like the school did what they were supposed to for him.
We called the school and I was told the superintendent is out today, so they transferred me to the principal here at Oaks Elementary. She says she is aware of the situation, they are investigating it, and then hung up on us. We'll let you know what happens. Reporting in Okemah, Abby Broyles, News Channel 4.
And Zaid's mother told us that she will file a formal complaint with the State Department of Education.
Cut it off, the evil little bastard. Look, it's funny that, because I remember being told stories by my grandparents that, I know it's the same in Britain as it was in Ireland, is that children were beaten in schools years ago when they were left-handed. They were told not to write with their left hand. Various excuses were given. I think in Britain it probably would have been, well, you smudge the paper when you're writing left-handed and it's untidy. In Ireland it was because you were the devil. It's as simple as that. For all the bitching we've done about England over the years, for all the anti-English stuff in Ireland, with England it was practical. You're going to smudge your writing. With the Irish it was, you're the fucking devil. Crazy. It isn't an isolated example though. I'm told reliably that there's a great difference between Northern America and Southern America, the southern states. Maybe there's a lot to be said for that. But the indoctrination here, the conformity, preparing children for a life of rules and regulations and obedience, preparing them to join the assembly line of life. That's what really this is all about, in my opinion. And I'm going to defer to David again, not because I've got my tongue stuck up David's arse, I never have had, but he's written extensively about religion and schools and education and what the education system does, does to children. What should children be taught? I've always said, and I'm an absolutely passionate atheist, you've got to teach children about what goes on in other cultures. You've got to tell them that religion exists. Of course you do. You're doing a great disservice to children, and you're indoctrinating them in another way if you don't do that. Tell them about Catholicism, about Judaism, about Islam. But from what angle? I always say, tell them that it's out there. When they get older, when they get old enough to make their own minds up, let them make their own minds up. But I find this very scary. I really do. I believe in a complete separation of church, state and education myself. Richard Dawkins has had a lot to say about children and religion over the years. Now, I find Richard Dawkins kind of reprehensible, really, even though I would agree with a lot of what he says. I find him arrogant and rude and obnoxious and completely insensitive to people's beliefs and their ideas. This is Dawkins talking about the fact that he believes that indoctrination is a form of abuse. Have a look.
I think it's okay to tell a child the truth. But I would prefer to encourage a child to make up her own mind and to think about the evidence and to believe things when there is evidence. What I think is not okay, what I think is deeply immoral, is to tell a child that when she dies, if she's not good, she's going to go to hell. That seems to me to be mental child abuse and an utter disgrace.
Dawkins is a smug, self-satisfied muppet. He's very intelligent, I would guess. I don't like his dogmatic and condescending attitude, but I agree with him. I've taken a bit of flack for doing radio shows about why I believe, you know, there are evidence that the religious stories we grew up with in our religions have been told for tens of thousands of years in other civilizations. But I never do that in an arrogant, mocking way, because ultimately, despite all the information you have, you never truly know, do you really? But I believe that religion and religious belief is a prison that we've made for ourselves. I had an interesting conversation this week on the radio show with Anjam Chowdhury. Took a bit of stick for it as usual for having him on. Wanted him on because, first of all, it was an exclusive. He's on bail at the moment, awaiting trial in January, where he's accused of trying to elicit support for Islamic State. That's what he's accused of. I'm not going to get into all of that because Hayden and myself and others have gotten into freedom of expression and your right to say what it is you believe without fear of being imprisoned or incarcerated or whatever like that. Now, what Anjam actually really said, I don't know. We'll get into that in future programmes. But he believes that he really does believe that the Christian West is trying to prevent the rise of the Islamic right in the Middle East and is trying to stop it. And he rubbished the idea of false flag terror, and he scoffed at any notion that the West created ISIS. This is what religion does. Religion prevents people from thinking critically, from looking at a set of facts and forming an opinion based on the facts, not on the ideology, which is a huge problem because, as I've said time and time again on programmes, the psychopaths pulling the strings, creating the madness, the paradigm we exist in, they thrive on it. It's a smokescreen. They know the truth. I robustly, on the radio shows I present, demonstrate why the benevolent creator stories are not true. Not to humiliate, but to educate and to say to people, you've got to think for yourselves. This lady you can see here, Shell Meadow, wonderful woman, came on the Richie Allen Show this week. Homeschools her children. They've not seen television. She doesn't show them television. They've not been vaccinated. And they don't go to church, but she talks to them about the belief systems that exist out there. Catch that interview on the Richie Allen Radio Show, which you can find on YouTube, excuse me, youtube.com. I'm not saying now I'm endorsing homeschooling by Shell Meadow or others. I'm saying it's an interesting thing. It's worth checking out. And in fact, I've talked about it with my fiance. It's something we might look into when we have a child. It's a big week for religion. It's a big week for the Catholics in America. The Pope is on the move. Pope Francis is on tour in his Pope Mobile. He's been talking about everything from climate change, more nonsense by the way, ending war, the usual stuff, even though the Vatican has money in some of the biggest arms companies in the fucking world. And the Pope is saying, end wars. Holy shit. He's apologised for child abuse and homelessness. He mentioned homelessness, amazingly enough. He always does, to be fair to him. While at the same time, venues that he was due to speak at were being cleansed of any evidence of homeless fucking people. You're laughing because you've seen all this before.
Well, I'm just laughing because we know this is how it works, isn't it? You know, be pious, be giving your money to us.
To us, yeah. Loads of it.
You're born in sin.
Believe it.
You're going to sin more. You're going to hell. But give us your money. Oh, Dave AIDS.
And they don't often get challenged about their holdings in gun-making companies. But when they do, what do they say? Well, nobody's perfect.
Yeah. Well, we're all born in sin. And apparently with a large share in a very popular Italian gun maker.
Yeah. Scumbags, all of them, every one. You can see on the Daily Mail story here, I remember, Hayden, years ago, the Tour de France started in Ireland one year. It started in England a couple of years ago. They're branching out the Tour de France, and it came through Waterford. We were excited about it. It's a big deal because obviously thousands of people came into the city, spent a few bob. We had the cameras in and all of that. But Hayden, I was pretty annoyed, and I made it pretty known at the time I was annoyed, that the local police scooped up a lot of homeless people, put them on a bus, drove them outside the city and gave them cheap vodka. You shouldn't be laughing at that.
I never said I was that nice, but I mean, you got to admit, at least, you know,
it's
in
sick
Ireland,
though, isn't
they
it?
put them on a bus and gave them vodka. In other countries, they just beat them with sticks.
They just beat them with sticks, yeah.
So, you know, if you've got to pick the lesser of two evils.
Yeah, you're right. And the religious, those who preach, by the way, and most of those who worship on a Sunday, they are overwhelming fucking hypocrites. You and I both know this, because while they tell you that we must help the asylum seekers in Europe, we must help those fleeing Syria, we have to do it, none of them would offer a spare room to any of those people, even though it's what Jesus or Jesus or whatever the fuck he was called said they should do. What?
Jesus.
Whatever. The white guy with the beard from
yeah, the white guy with the beard.
Franco
and the blue
Zeffirelli's
eyes.
Jesus Christ Superstar. Yeah.
Robert Powell.
Robert Powell. Was that Zeffirelli? It was Zeffirelli, wasn't it?
I don't
No, it
remember.
wasn't Zeffirelli.
No, but he was Jesus. When I grew up, that's what Jesus looked like. Robert Powell.
Robert Powell.
that was Jesus.
It's time for a break, isn't it? We're going to take a break. Right. When we come back, we're going to talk about a shooting in Hebron in Israel this week. Hebron, which of course is a Palestinian and an Israeli side. We'll also talk about Piggate and much more. Back in about 90 seconds. See you then.
Attention small business owner, when is a box more than just a box? No! Oh no, that's just weird. A box is more than just a box when it can give you a couple of extra hours in bed, or at the very least some time to do something more fun and or productive than bookkeeping. Just bang all your paperwork in a box and we'll take care of the rest. Accounts Direct. Accountants on your side.
And you're very welcome back to the Richie Allen Show in association with BVtv and BVtv.com. I'm Richie Allen. Good to be with you. Do check out Beyond Vision TV. It's bvtv.com or co.uk.
Beyondvision.tv.
It's beyondvision.tv. Should have written that down. Beyondvision.tv. Check out liveleak.com. Check out the Live Leak television show every Thursday at 10:30 p.m. It's fantastic. Check out davidicke.com/headlines. And do me a favour, check out unreportedtruth.com, which is being headed up by Aaron Calland. It's a new platform for people to put videos on, articles, stuff like that. Be a citizen journalist. That's unreportedtruth.com. A story which is getting massive coverage in the independent media, but scant coverage in the mainstream media. I'm not saying it hasn't got any coverage. It's not getting any in-depth coverage. Is the shooting dead in Hebron of 18-year-old Palestinian woman Hadil Salah al-Hashlamoon. She was shot at a checkpoint which divides the Israeli and Palestinian parts of the city. The Israeli said she wouldn't open her purse and that she came at the soldiers with a knife and attempted to stab one of them. But you can see the photographs now as I'm talking to you. And the Palestinian National Authority has said that the photographic evidence clearly shows that she wasn't holding a knife and that she was murdered for refusing to lift her veil and open her purse rather. Now, Mustafa Barghouti, he's the leader of the Palestinian National Initiative, and he gave an interview to Russia today, and during that he said this.
The Israeli behavior, of course, violates every norm, and of course we've been hearing different stories, one lie after the other from the Israeli side. First, they claimed that she was trying to attack the soldier, Then they could not prove that. Then they claimed that she was trying to attack other soldiers, and this was not proven. All the photos showed that the woman was very peaceful. She didn't do anything, and she was shot to death. And not only shot to death, she was left on the ground for more than 30 minutes, bleeding. And now they are coming up with this new story about her refusing to show her face. I don't believe that. I think these are series of lies, but they reflect the fact that Israeli government has changed the rules of shooting Palestinians, and practically they have given every soldier and every Israeli illegal settler in the occupied territories the right to shoot innocent Palestinians for no reason.
This, of course, happened at a time when it's obviously well known that it's a Jewish and Muslim holiday week. It's a holiday period. As I said, the Palestinian National Authority wants an international investigation. The international community couldn't give a fuck, and they never will. And it's also important to point out, and maybe I don't do this enough, maybe when I say the international community, I too often say Ireland and England and Germany and America. But its neighbours in the region, Jordan, Yemen, Iran, couldn't give a fuck about Palestinians, the Palestinian people and their plight. They couldn't care less. They never have done. Palestinian media, or PAL media, posted this video, which they say shows the woman lying and bleeding to death in the street. Take a look at this video, it's very interesting.
يا شباب يا عجب ارجع لورا يا شباب ارجع لورا يقول لك يا شباب ارجعوا للثوره على طول ارجع ابليس عقل فكشاف ارجع لورا ارجع لورا لو تشيك يا شيخ هو بقى انا بقول لك
Nice the way they just dragged her out there, like a carcass, like an animal. Look, I've said it time and time again on the show. I don't even know why I continue to say it, because A, I'm probably preaching to the converted, and B, probably most people don't care anyway. Israel is a psychotic, barbaric regime. It really is. Its soldiers and its police force murder people with impunity. Gaza is the largest open-air prison in the world, and the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians continues with the support of the United States and British governments. Our governments have given them billions in aid and weapons. We've helped them become a nuclear power, and we turn a blind eye to whatever it is they do. It's as simple as that. You're one-sided, Richie, you're prejudiced. No, I'm not. I've said it time and time again. Violence is wrong. No matter who picks up a gun and points it at somebody else and pulls the trigger, they're wrong. An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. It's absolutely true. I want to show you another video. This was released this week by an Israeli news website called 404. And it's a video purportedly showing the shooting of a young man by an IDF sniper while he was throwing rocks at soldiers. Do you know what's disturbing about this video? Is that it isn't disturbing. We've become so desensitized to these things. The kid's standing by a wall, he's throwing some rocks, he gets shot by a rifle in the leg. It was published on YouTube by Electronic Intifada. Have a look at the video. The video was posted on the Facebook page of that Israeli news website. You can see the Facebook page here. The comments were mostly positive, unfortunately. You know, you throw a stone, you will get a bullet, said one comment. And I appeal today, because remember, what's never mentioned, or what's not mentioned in much of the independent media, and a lot of the independent media, a lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it is very anti-Israeli. A lot of it goes beyond being anti-Israeli and gets into the sinister areas of talking about, referring to Israelis as the Jews all the time. And then some independent media goes beyond that even further and basically connects the state of Israel to every crime ever committed in the history of the world, which is even more sinister again. Look, I am lucky enough to know Jewish men and women around the world. I'm also lucky enough to know many English men and women whom I never held responsible for the crimes of the British government in Northern Ireland. Jewish people are not responsible for this. This is about Zionism. This is about an ideology, which most people don't have a fucking clue what it means whatsoever. And I'm not going to lecture you on it today, because the chances are you know all about Zionism already. Jewish people are as much victims of this as Palestinians. They really are. You might say, well, Richie, there's no electricity in Gaza at the moment. The blockade is still there. The city's in ruins. Yes, right. I'm not saying Jewish people are putting up with that. But they're the victims of their own government. And I say time and time and time again to Jewish people in Israel who are watching this now, and there will be some, you can do something about it. You really can. Don't allow your children grow up in a world like this. Don't allow them grow up where a couple of miles down the road somebody is shooting at somebody else. You can do something about it. The BDS movement, I've said this time and time again. The boycott, divestment and sanctions movement is how you can stand against the crimes of the state of Israel. We have done it over the years. We did it to stand against apartheid. We did it to stand against the brutality of certain dictators in certain Middle Eastern countries. We can do something about it. Have a look at this clip.
The state of Israel. The BDS movement is a call from Palestinian civil society to impose non-violent measures to get Israel to comply with its obligations under international law and end its denial of Palestinian rights. The movement is loosely based off of South Africa's anti-apartheid movement in the 1970s and 80s. Now, 10 years on, BDS is making some serious headway. Across college campuses, and in particular after Israel's summer 2014 war on Gaza, more and more student associations are urging their universities to stop investing in companies that operate in the Israeli-occupied Palestinian territories. In the University of California system alone, 7 different student bodies passed divestment resolutions. And across the Atlantic in the UK, the National Union of Students recently voted to ally itself with the BDS campaign, something Prime Minister Netanyahu lashed out against.
They boycott Israel, but they refuse to boycott ISIS. That tells you everything you want to know about the BDS movement.
Bibi is right, by the way. If you boycott Israel, it's only fair to boycott ISIS. Hayden, I didn't realise you could buy stuff from ISIS. What the fuck?
Well, you know, I was looking at I went into I believe it's called Iceland. It's where the poor people shop down, you know. And I was looking, couldn't find anything that said made in ISIS land.
No.
Not a damn
thing.
Not a thing. Nothing said made in Caliphate.
Made in Caliphate. Because we would boycott that, let's be honest about it.
I would boycott that in a heartbeat.
In a heartbeat.
I will not tolerate
Bibi must have been on one when he mentioned boycotting ISIS. So we're going to start a new campaign called BISIS. And it just means boycott ISIS. So if you can find something on sale by those dastardly murdering bastards in Syria, tell us and we will boycott them. Listen, another thing, don't worry about being labelled racist. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of Jewish men and women around the world, some of them prominent academics, some of them prominent in the arts, in entertainment, in music, support the BDS movement, including the children of men and women who died in the Holocaust. You're making that up, Richie. No, I'm not. Go to the BDS websites. There are several of them. There are a number of endorsements from people whose aunts, uncles, parents and grandparents were murdered in that fucking heinous way in Germany in the 1930s and 40s. And they support it. Call your member of parliament or your senator or your congresswoman. Or tell them that Hadil Salah al-Hashlamoon was a fucking real woman and she was murdered. And tell them that you want a response from them. You want them to hold the Israeli government to account for that. And any other government around the world that allows its citizens be treated like that. I'm talking about the Iranians. I'm talking about the North Koreans. All right, let's be consistent about it. But today we're talking about Israel. And now this story, which, again, in the independent media, we're getting so much, I suppose, mileage out of. But the mainstream media has kind of dropped like a hot potato, really, in the last few days. The Piggate scandal. This is Cassette Boy and getting piggy with it. Take a look at this.
Today I want to talk about me and pork. I get a kick out of getting my dick out. So let no one doubt it's going in a pig's mouth. As I said, I'm going to get me some head from a pig who's dead. This is big. I'm going to stick my dick in a pig. Getting piggy with it. Getting piggy with it. Getting piggy with it. Getting piggy with it.
Ah, the old shiny-faced pig fucker, eh? I'll tell you what, folks, right? Nobody's going to convince me that you can dismiss this sort of thing with the boys will be boys, you know. Young boys having a few laughs. Few quid, too much money maybe. If you're involved in initiation rituals that involve you inserting your fucking penis into the mouth of a dead pig, to get into clubs that think it's okay to mock the least fortunate people in society, namely the aforementioned homeless, by not only burning money in front of their faces, but also pissing on their faces when they are unconscious and lying asleep in cardboard boxes in doorways. Yes, a former member of the Bullingdon Club, or a man who claimed to be anyway, told me in an email I was sent some weeks ago, in fact before this all blew up, that this is the sort of stuff these people got up to. And that the Piers Gaveston Society is even more sinister in terms of some of the sex being carried out at some of the orgies. These people are fucking sick. They are psychotic. And they're in charge. They're in charge. Can you imagine it? How we have failed as people to allow a situation where people like this can represent us, can make rules, write laws, enshrine into legislation laws which screw over the worst people in the country. The mainstream media, like I said, they skirted around the story last week, couple of mentions, but they've dropped it. Like I said, like a hot potato. There was no Prime Minister's question time this Wednesday, just gone, at the Houses of Parliament, because Cameron was in Europe talking about the refugee crisis conveniently. I'm reliably informed that even if he was there, that Jeremy Corbyn wouldn't have brought it up anyway. Corbyn wants to stay away from this sort of nonsense. But this isn't nonsense, this is kind of sinister. Hayden, you've spoken a lot about it on Live Leak. Harmless hijinks by a bunch of scumbags, something more sinister. What do you think?
Well, the act itself, harmless and stupid, because nothing was harmed in the creation of... If only it was on video. If only.
The picture is out there, though. Somebody will send you the picture. LiveLeak.com is one of the biggest websites in the world. Somebody's going to leak that photograph.
If they do, we will post it.
Of course you'll post it.
The despicable people. They're despicable. Setting aside any larger, not to belittle it, but conspiracy regarding it, and those organisations like the Bohemian Club and the Piers Gaveston, which does sound like an indigestion medicine.
Scumbags, yeah. It does, Gaviscon, yeah.
They're just reprehensible human who are raised. Remember, as kids they weren't evil. They to be really, truly a horrible bastard like Cameron or Boris, aren't I a lovable, silly sausage Johnson? That takes training, and they've had the humanity quite probably beaten from them. There's probably quite a bit of that, and they've been encouraged to think they're better than other people, that they're superior than other people, that they're of better breeding, that because
and this is why they're selected.
Of course.
Yeah.
They're from powerful families.
This is why they're selected.
This is the behaviour I expect worse.
Absolutely right. That's a really interesting point, that what these societies got up to. If you're getting the pig story and you're getting the burning the money story, what you're not hearing is probably absolutely heinous. These people are sick. They're absolutely sick. And they have to be stopped. It's as simple as that. You need to disconnect from your television. Get away from it. Get away from the sport. Get away from the stupid programs. Get away from Friends reruns on the Comedy Channel. Get away from fucking X Factor. Start meeting with people. Get out in your own community. Spend time with people. Talk to people. This has to end, this madness. Because when they get done with the 100,000 children and the people who have been working their arses off but failing to survive, taking their tax credits away from them, who do you think they're coming for next? They're coming for you. That's the end of this week's Richie Allen television show in association with BVtv and DavidIke.com. Massive thanks to Hayden Hewitt for his support of it and for the post-production here at BVtv. We're taking a couple of weeks off. I've not had a break. I've worked non-stop since June of last year, putting together the Richie Allen radio show, and then laterally the television programme. So I need some time off. But in the meantime, stay with beyondvision.tv, get onto the website. Stay with liveleak.com and with davidike.com/headlines. And I will see you next time on the Richie Allen television show. Until then, look after yourselves and one another. Bye for now.